So this video is an explanation of how to create a mission, a basic mission to start, and the mission will be using the Q Ground Control app. Now importantly, the app version that we're using is an early version and not the one that you would simply download from the Play Store. It's perhaps not as pretty color-wise as the one from Play Store, but the early version has a feature that's very important, or can be very important, which the later one does not have, and we cannot make it work that way. And that is, you can rearm the boat using the cell phone or using this earlier app, which you can't do with the later app. So let us say, for example, you sailed the boat out past the RC range of the remote, which is say 500 yards, but you sailed out to 800 or 1,000 yards. And something has happened to the boat. It's stalled for whatever reason. There's a thermal cutout, an overcurrent cutout. All of these reset themselves, but so in other words, the boat could go, but if you're not able to arm the boat, it won't move, and you can't do it with the radio. So you want to be able to do it with the telemetry link. So we've decided to persevere with that early version for that one function, which is very important. All right, to create the mission, it's very straightforward. You turn the boat on, turn the phone on. All right, the moment you plug the phone in, or plug the lead in, it brings up the app, which, as I said, you've downloaded. It's already on the device.
Manual flight mode.
It immediately connects. Now on the screen it says there no GPS lock for vehicle. Obviously,
fail-safe trigger 0 times 1.
It's very important.
Change failed.
It's very important that we have GPS lock. Now, when you have GPS lock, the little LED in the boat, the status LED will turn green, as I've shown you before, and then you can then build the mission. All right, it's straightforward from here. So first thing you have to do is you're going to touch on, you want to create a mission, you click on the thing that looks like a zigzag. All right, the very next step is you have to click on takeoff. So let's put it like that. If I turn the boat, okay, if I was at the beach, obviously the arrow would point out to sea. You'd arrange the boat so it points out to sea, so that your entire mission will lead from the tip of that arrow going out with your waypoints in line like that. Okay, having created the takeoff, to actually do the mission, you would now unplug. So you take the takeoff, bring it down, put your boat in the water, roughly there, and now you disconnect.
Communication last.
All right, when it says that, you can now click on plan, just there, plan and file. Click on blank. It says create a plan, yes. All right, now it's straightforward, and we put takeoff again, put it in the water. Drag it down, place it in the water. Let's move this up a bit. Okay, now we're going to be working on the waypoints. Let's just move that up a little bit so it's in line with the arrow. Obviously, once your boat's on the beach, it's very easy because you'll be way down there. So your actual position of your boat and your takeoff point will be very close. So, all right, the next thing. So you basically follow this column on the left as the various items light up. So you use them. Now we go to waypoint. Click on waypoint, and we do the first one. Okay, so that is where the boat. That's the destination waypoint where you want the boat to go to, and you can see on the top it says there distance 359. Let's say you wanted to take that out to 500 meters, like that. Let's move it up. That's where you want to drop your bait. Now, if you want the boat to drop the bait automatically, you have to qualify that waypoint. You have to give an instruction. So the next waypoint that I mark will be the instruction. Click it there. Another one. I'm going to do 2, 3, and 1 back there. All right, I'm going to explain why I've done so many. So that's the destination waypoint. The first one is going to qualify, number 3. The first one is going to tell the boat what to do when it reaches waypoint 2. So I selected 3, I click on that, click on basic, click on advanced, there. waypoint. Yeah, I'm still unplugged. Okay, importantly, although I've unplugged it, we have to also instruct the app that it must disconnect. So click on there, click disconnect. Very important, that step. If you don't do that, you won't be able to continue. Go back to your mission. Right, now we are on working with waypoint 3, which is an instruction or a qualification on at waypoint 2. So I click on waypoint, I click on basic, I click on advanced, and I scroll up and I set servo. It says there set servo. Alright, importantly, what servo do we want to instruct? Now, the bait release servo on the later boats, which has got the newer speed, the newer autopilot, the servo is number 2. On earlier versions, it was servo 6. But in this one, it's 2. Simply touch 2, click done. And then, okay, so now it's servo 2 that's going to move. And by how much do you want it to move? What must the throw be? And we want that to be around about 2000. Click 2000. There we go. So, importantly, when it reaches waypoint 2, you can see that 3 has now disappeared. I've used it as an instruction. Servo 2 will move. It will throw 2000, which is almost the full throw. And the full throw of the servo to actually open the bait tray flap, and the bait will drop off. But because that sometimes happens very quickly, and you don't want to run the risk of towing your boat back, so basically the servo will pump once and hopefully open and drop the bait. But if there's a lot of pressure from a heavy bait, it can be that it needs 2 pumps to properly open. So I do the same thing exactly using waypoint 4. I click on the waypoint again, basic, advanced, scroll down to set servo, and I do exactly the same thing. It's the same servo 2, done, pump it 2000, done. So in essence, what's going to do, you see 3 and 4 have disappeared. It's basically going to pump the servo twice to make sure that it opens the flap. Now, the reason for having the 5th waypoint, this one over here, this is where you want to sail the boat to. Once you've dropped the bait, you certainly don't want the boat to sail back over the line. So you would have the boat sail, drop the bait, and then sail to one side before turning to come home. And then the 6th one, you'd bring it back close to the line, or close to where you are. Oops. So 7, we don't want that one, delete. We want the boat, touching the screen. So we want the boat to leave at the launch point, sail to 2, drop the bait, sail to the right, turn and come back. And basically when it arrives at 6, you can make 6 wherever you want to. You can bring it closer, a bit further from your line. But in essence, you're going to come back parallel to your line, and you'd come back opposite to the bow in the line. So if the wind were blowing and there's a bow in the line that way, obviously you'll come back this way. If the wind is blowing another direction, you'll put this on the other side. But certainly you don't want to come back over the line. When the boat arrives back at 6, it will stop, and that is essentially your mission. A little bit closer, there we go. Right, now I want to connect. I want to upload this to the boat. I simply reconnect, just like that.
Hold flight mode.
Not sure if it's going to upload now, let's see. There we go. Okay, syncing mission. That's it. Your mission is loaded. So using the remote, if you wanted to start that mission, obviously radio would be on, and the boat wouldn't be beeping because it would have been armed. Okay, so in other words, very, very important. Obviously, for the boat to work, you have to arm it, and that means that all the switches must be in the correct position. That one in the center, that one up, and that's spring loaded. Now, these have all been locked in place, and this one can only go up and down, not left and right, and this one can only go left and right, not up and down. So that's spring loaded. But very importantly, this trim control, this rudder trim control, we have calibrated the radio to the boat or to the autopilot with that in the center, and you will not be able to arm it if that's in the wrong position. Possibly if it's to the right, you'll arm it, but if it's to the left, you won't. So I have armed it, and now if I want the boat to sail, if I was in the water and I put the boat in the water and I wanted the boat to follow that mission, I'd simply hit that switch there and the boat will take off. Now the reason the boat is moving is because it's all armed, ready to go, and it feels or thinks it's in the water. It will now sail that mission from there to there and back to there, dropping the bait at waypoint 2. Now, there's no need to use RTL at this particular point because the entire mission was created, which basically brought it back to shore. When it gets to 6, you can obviously use the return to launch button. You can pull that this way and it will bring it closer, and at some point you can go back to the center to take manual control. There is a very important thing to discuss here, and that is that if you're going to create a mission which is very much further than the range of the radio, there is a fail-safe feature which basically says the boat will sail for X number of seconds without radio signal before the fail-safe kicks in. When the fail-safe kicks in, it essentially triggers the return to launch. So as its factory said, it's set to 20 seconds. It means the boat will sail on for 20 seconds. Now, considering the boat does roughly 3 meters per minute, 3 meters per second, you're going to be looking at 180 meters in a minute. But for only 20 seconds, you can only do 60 meters more. You obviously want to finish your mission, so the idea is to increase the timer on the app to allow the boat to sail for longer without RC signal. So that's the next step that I'm going to explain. All right, so to alter that timer, you're basically going to click on there, main menu. You're going to go on to the gears, which is settings. You're going to go down to parameters, where it says parameters, like that. Click on that, and then you're going to go down until it says failsafe, FS, failsafe. Click on that. Now, you don't change anything over here. The failsafe action is for the boat to return to shore if it loses radio signal after the timeout period, which at the moment is set to 20 seconds. So what we suggest is we want to make that, well, you work that out based on how much further you want the boat to go. So if you're at 500 and you wanted to sail another 200 meters, and we know that it does 200 meters in a minute, then you wanted to get there and get back. So give it 2 minutes more. So 2 minutes is 120 seconds. So you'd want 120. So you'd want about 140 odd seconds. But you can give it. But let's say you gave it 200 seconds. So you would change that to 200 seconds. Click done. So now the boat would sail on for a period of, and then you would click save. We are connected. Alright, so I need to explain this to you. So I click on 200 seconds, and it then basically, and I say save, you're going to see what happens. It says value must be within 1 to 100. Alright, we hear what they're saying, but we've tested it multiple times, many times, and you can put a higher value. And so the 200 will work, but you need to scroll up and you need to say forced save. They say dangerous, but we've tested it and we're satisfied that it works perfectly well. We've gone as much as 500 seconds and it still works perfectly well. So when you click the force save, then you can push save and it will save. So now it will sail on for 200 seconds after the radio signal has disappeared, meaning you're going to basically have 100 seconds to get to the drop zone and 100 seconds to get back. You're giving yourself plenty of time. Now, what happens is, let's say it reaches the waypoint, which is well out of radio range, and halfway back, the timer runs out. What's going to happen is the boat's going to stop, but then it's going to automatically kick in the forced RTL, which is basically a safety. So that once it hasn't received signal for 200 seconds, then it will kick in RTL and the boat will sail back to shore. So I hope I've explained that clearly. You try to make this number big enough up to a maximum of 500 seconds, but you can start with something like 200 if you're going to go, say, 600, 700, 800 meters. But importantly, if it will get there, drop the bait, turn around. But if it hasn't arrived back where it reaches where there's radio contact, then it will stop you won't have control with the radio. The boat will then sail back to shore, and when it approaches the beach, it's important that to get back control, simply having the radio on will not re-establish control. All that you need to do there is you would simply toggle. I'm just going to do this for a moment. You would simply toggle this switch through all three positions and back to the center. And then you will regain control via the radio. So importantly, if the boat is sailing back under fail-safe RTL, means it's been triggered for whatever reason, and you are not able to stop it, you just have to flick this through all three positions and then back to the center, and that will give you. And now you're back in manual, and then you'll have manual control and you can drive the boat again. You can also then re-engage the return to launch for whatever period of time you want to, on off as you need it, but you will not get control. You will not get control directly when the boat sails back into radio range if the fail-safe timer was exceeded. This is an extremely important screen, in the sense that if the boat has not been armed, you've created the mission, you're ready to go, it looks so like all you have to do is slide the slider to the right to start the mission that you've created. You've got your launch point, you've got your waypoints, you've got everything installed, you're on the beach, the boat's in the water, and it looks that all you have to do is touch that. Very, very, very important. Don't do that if that is in the disarmed state. It has to be armed before you do that. If you use this, a very strange quirk happens. It basically puts the boat's speed controller, like the ESC, into program mode the moment you would slide this up. So don't start the mission. You basically have to go there, you have to click on that, and you have to push arm. When you push arm, then you arm it before you start any mission. Even if you don't get, there we go, now it says, okay, this time it says continue mission, you hadn't actually started, it's fine, it can say continue or start, doesn't matter. Then you can start the mission, and you start it over and the boat will take off. But if you do this before arming, it's vitally important. Then you're going to put the boat into a programming mode, and you're going to potentially lose important factory settings. So this is a little bit tricky. Just remember, when you see a thing that says start mission, continue mission, or any such thing, look on top, it must be armed. Now, the safest way to do this would be to use the remote, and to obviously use the remote to arm. When it's armed, then you would use this auto function. You will see that if I did this, click that, and I put disarmed. Okay, the boat is now disarmed. If I use the remote to start the mission, if I click that over,
auto flight mode,
it doesn't do any damage. It won't start. It's in auto mode, but the boat doesn't move.
Flight mode. Auto
it
flight
won't move
mode.
because the boat is disarmed. So it's essential. Now, if I arm it from the remote, I just hold it to the right like that. Now it's armed. And if I were to click the button, it starts the mission. So I just move it on to start it, and I bring it straight back. So there's no harm. You won't do anything wrong using the remote. It's very simple. There you would simply arm it using the stick to the right for 10 seconds, and then use the switch to trigger the mission. But if you do it from the cell phone, absolutely essential that before you touch any slider here, you double check that it's armed there. That's important. Okay, so there's one more important and intricate thing I want to explain to you. It is not necessarily the safest thing to do, but I'm going to explain it anyway. If you create the mission using the phone and you start the mission, so in other words, you don't use the radio at all, so the radio is off when you begin. The boat's on, the cell phone is on, you're linked via the link, and you create the mission, but there was never a radio on when you started, then there is no timer, meaning that there is no fail-safe, meaning that you could make that mission as long as you want and don't worry about a timer. The headache is, or the problem is, that there's no safety net. With a timer, there's a maximum distance the boat will sail away from you, and then it will turn around and come home. If you only use the cell phone to set it up, and you don't turn the radio on to start when you load the mission and create the mission, or create the mission and load the mission, and you don't have the radio on, there will be no timer registered, and the boat will then do the entire mission. There will be no timer involved. You don't have to worry about how long it takes, but there's also no safety net. There's no point at which the boat will say, I've now gone very, very, very far and I should go home. It won't do that. So just remember that. I know people have said, oh, but I can use my phone. You lose that one function. So if you are going to use the radio, then you have to increase the timer if the distance you're going is greater than the RC range or the remote.